Welcome back to the Big Geek Podcast. I'm your host, Ron Avis, and sitting with me on the couch to my left is my co-host,
Nick Wright.
And today we're going to be talking about our 10 favorite Atari 2600 games. All right, Nick, here we are. We're doing another one of our top 10, or 10 favorites. And, you know, kind of an unexpected console, if you will, but nevertheless, one of the most popular ever.
Yeah.
The Atari 2600, released on 9/11, 1977.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I didn't realize that.
Yeah, it's kind of a funny date now.
Yeah.
You know, if you think about it, not funny, but ironic or whatever you want to say. It's one of those infamous dates. But back in 1977, it was no big deal. It was just Atari 2600 Day. Or as it was known back then, it was just actually called the Atari, I guess. Or the Atari Video
VCS,
Computer.
yeah.
The VCS,
Yeah.
the Video Computer System.
Yeah.
And the reason it was called that was because, well, it wasn't called the 2600 until the 5200 came out.
Right.
Which is, it's funny, you know, like I was doing a little bit of research on the 2600 before we went on, and I totally didn't even think about that. Like, why would they call it the 2600? I just feel like it's always been called that.
Yeah.
But no, it was only necessary when they released a new Atari system.
Well, and kind of similar to that is, you know, when you were saying that it came out in 1977, it's so weird because it doesn't really seem that way to me because we got ours like in the early 80s. I mean, I was born in 1977, you know, so I don't remember that. And when we got it, I mean, it seemed like it was a new thing and came out, I mean, because it was still super popular. Because I remember there still being like, and what must have happened, I think Pac-Man, just came out. Because I remember like, it's a big deal and there's lines and lines and the people are selling out of it. And, you know, so it felt like the 2600 to me was new, but really it wasn't. It'd been out for years already.
First the Pac-Man eats through a maze of dots. Then the Pac-Man heads for the corner spots. Then he eats his fill of a power pill. And then all those ghosts turn blue. Boo! And Pac-Man eats them all too.
Only Atari makes the Pac-Man home video game, and you can only play it on an Atari video game system.
Have you played Atari today?
But that's when we got it, was like when Pac-Man came out.
Yeah, you think about killer apps nowadays, system sellers. For the 2600, it was for sure like in 80 when Space Invaders came out. And then again in like 82 or 83 when Pac-Man came out. So
I was going to say 81.
Well, you're right. Yeah, not 83. 83 is actually when the video games crash occurred, right?
Yeah, the great
so it had to be
like that was around 83.
Yeah, so it probably was more like around 81 because Pac-Man came out in 1980.
Of course, and Pac-Man kind of had a hand in that.
Yeah,
it was so bad.
Yeah, 7 million copies of Pac-Man went out. As rushed and poor a game as it was.
I think Pac-Man and E.T. are like the biggest names that had a hand in that crash.
Well, let's talk, like, E.T. is the game that is the infamous game that everyone talks about when they think of what was responsible for the crash. You know, like, there was all those bad E.T. games sold or not sold.
Let's not talk about E.T. though, because we'll talk about E.T. later, I think.
We will. We'll talk about E.T. later. But I guess I was just saying that, like, you're right. Like, Pac-Man was a game that is just as responsible for, you know, the crash.
Yeah.
As E.T.
E.T.'s like the one that everybody says, but Pac-Man, everybody was buying it because of the name, and it was not good.
Yeah, and you know, like as generations go, I mean, it took years. It wouldn't be for another 20 years before like things started catching up. You know, we were playing like subpar ports all the way up until like the Super Nintendo era, really. Yeah. But you know that the subpar ports began. I don't want to say subpar. They were fun. They were definitely a lot of fun. Or maybe we just didn't know any better.
I mean, you had the arcade version, but then at home, you know, that's just how it was.
Yeah.
You know.
Hey, he didn't know any better.
Pac-Man's so funny though because like he doesn't even turn around.
No.
He's just like always facing the
Yeah,
one
when
way,
he goes
and
left, he just kind of backs up.
he doesn't turn like up, down, or anything. He's just always that way. Like, bonk, bonk, bonk.
Yeah, wasn't that little LCD Coleco version of Pac-Man basically just the same thing? Like, it never turned around either, but it was an LCD.
Yeah.
So you expect a little bit better quality. But, you know, I don't want to jump too far ahead when we start talking about games. We're just talking about the system itself. I think, too, one of the reasons why we don't necessarily think back to the 70s as when it truly began, partially because when the Atari came out, it was $200, which in today's money is $800.
Yeah, it was expensive.
It was a boutique item.
Yeah.
You know, it wasn't a household thing. Like, not everybody had one. It wasn't until it probably lowered in price. It got some redesigns to that beautiful wood panel version that everyone had.
Yeah.
Probably came down way in price. You started seeing it in more and more places. Like, I think Sears even had like some kind of deal where I think they had their own version of a console.
Yeah, they had their name on it.
Mm-hmm. So it was around that time and the release of, you know, some big games that really kicked it off. And I also think too that, you know, I feel like we didn't get one new. We probably got one secondhand, like in a yard sale, or, you know, I doubt that my family was able to afford one of these, you know, until like probably 80, 81. And I have no memory of buying one, bringing it home.
When we got ours, it was like the greatest scheme that my dad ever pulled off, I think.
Oh, I can't wait. I've never heard this. Tell the story, Nick.
Yeah, guys. So I was too young, really, I think, to be begging for such things. I didn't really even have a clue about it. But so I can thank my brother Mark for begging, wanting Atari 2600 and Pac-Man. But so anyway, so Mom and Dad, you know, finally caved, I guess, at some point and got it. And I, you know, and like, because I was so young, I don't really know all the details, but the scheme was, though, that he brought it home, but acted like he borrowed it from a friend, and we could only play it for like a couple days or whatever. And I'm not even really sure why they even did this. I guess just to see how much we enjoyed it. I don't know.
Well, it was expensive.
Yeah, I guess so. But yeah, so, you know, it was this big thing that, hey, you know, a friend from work let us borrow this, you know, and so we got to play it for a little while, but we had to, after a couple days, we had to take it back. Well, then it was like unveiled later on that, surprise, it's ours, you know.
That's awesome, man.
And it like blew our minds, you know.
I didn't know your dad was such a prankster, man.
Yeah,
such a jokester.
It's like the one time like ever.
That's really funny, dude.
But yeah, we had.
But it was Mark
and,
that was pulling the Ralphie like esque, you know, scheming ahead of time, you know, laying the groundwork, hinting, dropping hints.
So we got the 2600 with and they bought Pac-Man at the same time, and of course it came with Combat.
Yeah.
But
are you sure it? Because I was reading, and Combat was a pack-in game, the original pack-in game. But I was reading that later on the Atari 2600 came packed in with Pac-Man. Do you think it's possible you got it packed in?
Well, I don't know if it came with both games or not, because I know we had Combat.
Yeah.
So.
And who knows? Maybe they just threw in the box of Pac-Man along with it. Who knows what a Pac-Man is?
Yeah, I don't know, but.
Sorry, go ahead.
Pac-Man was the reason that we got a 2600, though. I know that. But when, you know, I sit down to play it, and I was too little. I didn't have a clue what I was doing.
Yeah, you were like 3.
I would always just go like to the right, straight up into the ghost, and just immediately died every time. Because the ghost would come out of the little ghost house, like on the right side of that little square, and come down at you. And I just went up and met him like every time. It just went, bang, 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 bang.
Like, Nick, are you trying to get eaten by the ghost?
Like I went through every life, just went straight into him and died. And I'm just having a ball.
Oh, yeah.
I loved it.
Oh, yeah. You're doing something. You know, I could picture like one of my, like Allison being about that age, a little bit younger. Somebody handing her a controller and she wouldn't care what's going on. She's just involved.
I can remember doing that though and just loving it.
Yeah, that's amazing. Now, do you have memories of playing in the arcade beforehand?
Not before that.
Okay.
I don't remember.
So really, Pac-Man 2600 was like your introduction to Pac-Man.
I never really thought about it that way, but I guess going by my explanations, it kind of sounds like that. So
That's
I
hilarious.
guess we'll go with that.
So you like walked up to the arcade for the first time. You're like, what is this? Why does he turn to the left when you go left?
Wow.
Why is he not eating a Pop-Tart in the middle of the screen? Like, what is that? Oh, man, that's great. That's a funny story. And I wish, I feel like I have such vivid memories of like every console I've ever gotten. But the 2600, I don't remember ever seeing a box for it. I'm just pretty sure that we just got one secondhand somewhere.
Yeah.
Like maybe somebody got a 5200 or something and then just gave us their 2600 or whatever. But, my brother was huge into video games, so I bet he had the most. He was probably the catalyst to getting one in the house because my brother Billy didn't care and I was too little. I looked up to my brother. I wanted to do what he was doing. But, like I'm with you. Like I remember playing, let's see, like, just arcade games that I'd seen in stores, like seeing at home. And it began my fascination with getting that arcade port into the home. We were all that way, I guess.
Yeah.
But the 2600, as it's known commonly nowadays, in '83 was the big crash. We'd had our innovations episode where we talked a bit about how Nintendo, one of their big innovations was creating like some quality assurance, some walls that you were put in front of some developers so they couldn't just churn out Purina Chow Wagon, like whatever that game was.
Yeah, Chuck Wagon Dog or something, I forget. But yeah, there was a dog food game that I remember reading about. Everybody had a game. Kool-Aid Man had a game. Everybody did.
But for a couple of years though, it was pretty special. Like, I was remembering the box art and stuff for the Atari 2600, and I think that the 2600 box art is my favorite box art of any generation, any console generation.
Yeah,
it's just so they look like album covers, man. They're just beautiful.
I do like them, but me and pixel art though. So
yeah,
I like that first series of NES games.
The black box cover they're great. Yeah. And I love pixel art too, and they're really different. Like when you go from just airbrushed characters that are supposed to represent a few pixels, then you get the NES, which is getting a little bit more advanced. Like they just stick the pixels on the box art. Like this is what you're getting.
Yeah.
You're not getting Indiana Jones and then you open up the game and it's just a few little pixels and this is nothing like Indiana Jones. This is like a vague, like dun 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 dun, like playing over and over and over again. But I hear you. So would you say that the NES is your favorite box art of all time?
Yeah, I guess so.
Is it?
I've never really thought about it, but yeah, I guess.
Yeah.
Just that style, I guess.
We have such fond memories of, older, the way games used to come packaged with instruction manuals and things like that. I don't remember instruction manuals in Atari games. Did they not come with instruction manuals?
Oh, yeah, they did.
They did? Okay.
Yeah, they were not really usually ever all that terribly thick. It might just be a couple pages.
Okay.
But I've still got a few, I think.
That's awesome. I tell you what, the next time we have one of those, we go to the arcade expo, I might have to pick up a few 2600 boxes and display it somewhere because I really enjoyed the art.
Sometimes they'll have a few, some of those tables will have a box underneath and you can flip through stuff, and sometimes they'll have a few instruction booklets and they're
priced pretty reasonably because, as we know, they were just oversaturated with, they couldn't sell the games. I see them with still shrink wrap and stuff, and they're not that expensive. So that's just kind of our introduction to the 2600. Now we're going to get into the actual games. A lot of games. I mean, as we said, I mean, the system itself really was most popular from like late 70s, early 80s. But it was around for a long time. It didn't die an easy death. I remember like them still pushing 2600 hard well into the Nintendo, the NES.
Yeah.
And just me like scoffing at it. Like, you can't do that game justice. Stop trying. You can't do Mortal Kombat, Atari 2600. What are you doing? But yeah, we're going to do our 10 favorite, 5 for me, 5 for you. And I tell you what, you can go first this time because I think I went first last time. If I'm not mistaken.
Well, I kind of hate to do this because, it's arcade ports of just, games I loved. But, I kind of like to give that console, name games that are unique to that console. But anyway, first couple I'm going to start out with are arcade ports. But it's what I played.
It's what you played. I mean,
so anyway.
Don't disingenuously throw a game out there just because it's unique to that system.
So Donkey Kong for the 2600. I mean, we played so much Donkey Kong, be it in the arcade, on the 2600, whatever. We we're all over Donkey Kong.
If I remember correctly, Donkey Kong was your number one arcade game.
I think it was.
Yeah, I think you and Martin both had it number one.
That or Super Mario Brothers, one or the other.
Well, yes, versus Super Mario was really high because it made the 10 on its own. Yeah. But I'm pretty sure Donkey Kong was your number one. So it makes sense that would be like one of your most played 2600 games.
Donkey Kong on the 2600, if I'm not mistaken, this was the first game that my brother saved his birthday money or whatever, saved money for, that he bought on his own.
That's awesome.
So that was like a big deal that he paid for this game and that one was his.
Now, that's interesting because it's a Nintendo license. What did the cartridges look like? Was it white? Am I remembering that right?
Yeah, it was kind of a tannish, kind of white, off-white kind of color.
I thought so.
Yeah,
because I had it, but I didn't play it a whole lot. Not because I didn't love it, but I just didn't play it all that much. I think I got it later in the life cycle.
Put out by Coleco.
Coleco, that makes sense. Yeah. That's kind of funny that Nintendo didn't port it, but
yeah, Nintendo, they sold the rights to Coleco to be able to
pay the bills,
produce it, I guess. Yeah.
Nintendo is just starting out, so and Coleco they were the big. Well, they're both like big toy companies, right? It makes kind of sense too, because Nintendo was a really big toy company and card company before they were big in video games. Coleco was like a huge deal in the toys back in the 80s, so why not? Yeah. Now remind me, the port. How close was it to the arcade? Did it have the levels, or was it just the first level?
There were two. It actually had 2 levels. What's Donkey Kong usually have 4? Yeah, 4 levels. Because the elevator and the pie or cement factory. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it only had the first one and the girders or the rivets where you jump. So
like the second level in the U.S. Okay, those are the 2 that I would probably want the most. Yeah. Cool.
And it was funny because Donkey Kong was just this big block, so ugly. And when you'd walk up the ladder, that's when he would beat his chest. It wouldn't be the arcade would kind of just randomly. I don't know what timing it might have had, but he every once in a while he'd beat his chest or whatever.
Right.
But, yeah, it was literally mapped to going up the ladder, so you can just go up and down the ladder just repeatedly just to make him just keep beating his chest over.
That's hilarious, dude. I didn't know that.
Yeah, I remember noticing that.
You caught onto that even back then, huh?
Yeah, catching on and just.
You're like, I want to make him beat his chest.
Yeah. Dance, monkey, dance.
Cool, man. Well, I'll throw some video footage of the game while we're talking about it, but
the barrels. When you jump over the barrels, I remember thinking that the barrels looked like Cookie Crisp, like cookies, rolling down the girders and
as they're
everything.
spinning down the.
Yeah, it just for whatever reason it reminded me of Cookie Crisp.
Did they have Did they have little spots on them?
They did, yeah. They had like little spots around them.
That's so funny.
I mean, it was like in a circle. It wasn't like just like everywhere.
Yeah,
you
yeah.
know, like chocolate chip cookies, but it was
Right.
like a little circle of little spots.
That's awesome. Yeah, well, it did what it could. I'm trying to picture what Donkey Kong would have looked like in 2600 in my head, but I'm sure what I'm imagining in my head, I'm giving it way too much credit because I think of that NES port being pretty good. This is a 2600, so you got to temper your expectations. Now, some graphics were pretty good. Some developers had were able to get the most out of
the
it.
The ColecoVision port looked very good.
Yeah, the ColecoVision. I forgot all about that. I never had one of those.
Mm-hmm. It looked very close to the arcade. I never had it though.
Cool. I wonder if they. I wonder if they had an exclusive right to that too, because how things are now. If Coleco was making the port of the game, and they were also making those little miniature arcade cabinets too. They clearly had that license. I wonder what year ColecoVision came out, and if Donkey Kong came out on 2600 later. Right, I'm probably thinking too much in terms of today with timed exclusives and stuff. Back then, they just shotgunned it out on anything they could, I suppose.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, how Namco made Galaga and all those other games, and Pac-Man. Namco made Pac-Man, but in the States, Bally Midway put it out. I mean, it's the same thing. Nintendo made Donkey Kong, but Coleco put out the games. For all the consoles and whatnot, because Nintendo didn't have its own console at the time.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. All right, well, that's Donkey Kong. It's first on your list. Yeah, I don't blame you. I mean, if you played it a bunch, throw it on there. Why not? I'm going to go ahead and go with a port, an arcade port for my number one as well. And I'm sad that it didn't really get its time to shine in our arcade episode when we were counting down. So I'm going to go ahead and give it its due right here with Space Invaders. The classic Taito game was a big hit for the Atari. Probably the first big hit for the little console. So over 2 million copies, I think. Yeah. Which is pretty huge. And, it played pretty well.
It was good.
Yeah, it wasn't bad at all. And I think back to actually having access to that arcade at my grandma's. I said before it was a basement, but it really was a patio, covered patio, inside. I would play it at home, and then I'd go over there and play it, and then I'd go back home and play it, and it's not a huge letdown. It felt pretty good.
Well, and that's what I was going to say is, Space Invaders, for me, is an interesting case where I played far more of the 2600 Space Invaders than any other Space Invaders. Mm-hmm. Donkey Kong, I played in the arcade a lot. Yeah. I played everywhere, Donkey Kong. And probably 2600 the least amount of Donkey Kong. But Space Invaders, I didn't really play it in the arcades so much. And so, when I picture, those aliens, it's the 2600 graphics that I would picture first rather than, the arcade sprites.
Yeah. Yeah, I can understand that. And, I think about that game, and it had all the sound effects. It wasn't compromised really in any way. He still shot through the shields.
Yeah, he's a madman.
He's a madman. Futurama reference. But the game itself isn't extremely complicated, but it laid the groundwork for a lot of really popular games that came later, like Galaga and Galaxian, and I'd be willing to bet, too, that a lot of people our age probably were exposed more to the 2600 version than the arcade, just like you said.
Well, and I kind of made this comment when we were talking about Space Invaders when we were doing our arcade episode, that the cabinet wasn't super kid-friendly either, because you couldn't see it.
I had to sit really high up on a stool.
Yeah, because of the way it was angled in the cabinet, you couldn't see the screen.
I pulled up some YouTube video watching a guy play the arcade, and I saw what you're talking about. It was definitely weird.
Yeah, it's a lot different than any other arcade cabinet because I could see other arcade cabinets, but Space Invaders was set angled down into the cabinet more, and like the plexiglass up front was more straight up and down that you're kind of like you can't get in there and see it.
Yeah, like I say, I remember we had a stool out there.
Yeah.
Yep, and even then it was kind of tricky because then there's all that like artwork inside too. So like you have to look over that.
Had like the moon kind of surface on it.
Mm-hmm. But as Space Invaders, it was the killer app of the late 70s, early 80s, and I definitely remember playing that game a whole lot. So it was kind of like my Street Fighter for the day. I played a lot of it at the arcades, and I played a lot of it at home, and I have a lot of fond memories of playing Space Invaders.
Yeah, and it utilized a feature that 2600 had for a lot of its games, where they would make a lot of different variations where you hit like that button.
Oh yeah, we didn't really talk about that. Little toggle switches.
Yeah, and so you could play like either with like no shields, or you could make the your ship fatter, so it was harder because it was a bigger target.
It was like dip switches, man. Like you got to take advantage. That's a great point about the Atari. They did have all those like different like inputs, and you could get it's really just the slight variation of each game, but they sold it as another game.
Yeah, that was like their way of saying like it's got 50 games.
Yes. They did, man. I was looking at some of the box art earlier, and 50 games. Like, come on, man. That's just Pong with a different color. It's just Pong with just a slightly different shaped ball. But I mean, Pong was a big deal. Just prior to the 2600 came out, and let's talk about that too. Like, it's funny, there was never an actual Pong cartridge sold. I can't believe that.
Yeah, I was trying to think, and finally we determined, it's under Video Olympics.
Yeah, Video Olympics. It's one of those cartridges that has like 50 games.
Pong with
totally
the paddle and everything.
Yes, great. Lots of memories of playing Pong. And I was like, well, I remember that they had like those, like Magnavoxes or whatever. Like there were definitely like Atari-like systems that only played Pong. Like they weren't cartridges. And they're similar in
the brown box.
Yeah. So I was like, am I just mistaken the 2600 for like some of those other older systems? I was like, no, I definitely remember using the paddle. And I guess they had paddles too, but it was on, like you said, what was it called? Olympic sport.
Video Olympics.
Video Olympics. Thank you.
Yeah.
But yeah, Pong, I feel like that deserves a shout out, but also just, if you guys are out there looking for Pong and you like, why isn't Pong on the top 100 games like Atari? Like, you go out and you look at other lists, like, it's not on there. It's because it's just part of another game. It's one of 50 games. But yeah, that's my number one. Nick, what's your number two?
Number two, so I got another arcade game, Qbert.
Qbert.
Yeah, which was another that I think ranked fairly high on my arcade list, but
it was in our top 10, so we both probably had it fairly high.
I think it was pretty well done on the 2600.
It really was.
I played a lot of Qbert on the 2600.
The Qbert is, if nothing else, a super colorful game, and the colors are represented in the 2600. It's like you said, it's really well done.
I think too that with the 2600 joystick that it translated well, that you were able to, and it would tell you too to like hold the joystick like at an angle, so it was kind of like at a diamond
matched
shape.
like the arcade,
so that you could get those angles.
Now that you bring that up, the Atari 2600 was just a joystick with a single red button.
Yeah.
And it tried to mirror more of like an arcade. And it wasn't until the 2600 came along and just like usurped everybody. And then they had the gamepad. So like that's what we think of now. And then of course analog. But for a while it was just that big, stiff, rubber plastic that I used to chew on all the time. I don't know why, but it's just great. It was just like a dog and a bone. I remember having like later on in life, like in its life cycle, like I had 2 controllers and like the thing had come off because I chewed on it so much. Like, why did I do that?
I feel like one of ours, like something was like broke inside of it or something, because you could kind of hear it like click. Like,
yeah.
Like click, click, click.
They weren't really well made, I guess.
No.
But anyway, Qbert it ported really well to the 2600. Maybe one of the better ports as far as arcades go. And it's not on our list. We're not talking about it. But Frogger was like another one of those games that seemed to port pretty well to the 2600.
I didn't never have Frogger, so I'm not super familiar with 2600 Frogger.
It's pretty good.
I love the Frogger arcade game though.
Yeah, it's fairly.
I don't know why we never really got Frogger on 2600. I don't know.
It was one of those two that had like, we talk about cartridges, or we haven't actually talked about cartridges, but you had like your standard kind of rectangular shaped or whatever. But then you had this other type that Parker Brothers would put out, it seemed like.
Yeah.
That was kind of
like had an
angular.
angle.
Yeah, it was kind of angular. It was weird. And it had like little grooves in it.
Yeah.
It's very different. But Parker Brothers, the board game company, did a lot of Atari ports. Like I remember them doing a bunch.
I don't remember what it was now. Maybe we'll have to look it up and like type it in like the Facebook comments or something. But there was a reason that they were different, and I had read what the reason was, but I don't remember now. It had something to do with like licensing and being able to produce the games or something. I forget what it was. But anyway.
Interesting. I'd like to maybe read a book on the 2600 at some time, because I bet you there's just tons of Nolan Bushnell was kind of known as, he was a bit of a character.
Yeah.
Who was one of the founders of Atari. So I bet you there's just a really ton of good little factoids that I could pull from because I've seen them, like history of Atari, history of video games prior to the game crash. And then I'd like to also learn more about the game crash too, if possible. Yeah. We'll probably get into the crash more when we get towards the ET. I'm sure it'll come up more.
But, back to Qbert. Interesting thing also about Qbert, it's a game that color is so important with it, because that's the whole point of the game, is changing the cubes to match, the color.
Right.
But we always played our 2600 on a black and white TV.
Oh my God, you're right.
We didn't even have like a color. I mean, we had like a color TV.
We had to rely on just different shades of gray and stuff.
Would not get hooked up to the color TV for whatever
gosh,
reason.
You're so right.
We had like this little black and white TV that was for our Atari, and so when I see like 2600 games being played like on an emulator or whatever now, and I see them in color, it's like, oh wow. They look so different because I'm not used to seeing them in color.
Dude, you're so right. We had one hooked up to the main TV, but we also had do you remember back in the 80s, they had these little portable, they were combination black and white little televisions and radios?
Yeah.
Yeah, so we had one of those too, and that was kind of like mine. I got to take that into my room and hook up games to it, and that's how I played my 2600 a lot on that black and white TV. It's so funny you mentioned that. Totally forgot. And with Qbert, with the your points you were getting to with colors, you just kind of had to look at the shades.
Yeah,
that's all you really had.
And you can do it. I mean, it wasn't a problem.
Yeah, but you're not taking advantage of that color palette that's so familiar with Qbert. Wow, man. Gosh, totally forgot about that.
And just thinking about just the old hookups with black and white TVs and whatnot too.
VHF.
Yeah, that little RF little
prong
adapter slider thing. You would slide it from TV to game.
You kids today are so spoiled with your HDMIs. Yeah, it was like that.
Yeah, it had those prongs. You had to screw it.
And they always broke. I remember many trips to Radio Shack buying the replacements of those. You had the official Atari one, but then I remember having all these crappy third party versions because those prongs would get damaged over time. I mean, at least ours did. I mean, you guys are probably way more careful with yours.
Yeah, I never damaged. I don't know.
I moved mine a lot. We had the main hookup in the the living room.
We never undid it. It just
yeah.
Stayed.
Well, they were really delicate, man. If like you were like undoing it, because like I have all these memories now flooding back in my head of me with a butter knife.
Well,
like fishing around back there.
And you're not exactly the craftiest person in the world either, so
I guess not.
I can kind of see how this might happen.
You saying I break stuff. I broke your dad's expensive sander that one day.
Oh, well.
That was just inexperience.
Yeah, that was an accident. I mean, yeah, you sanded over those cable. And then it chewed up the cable.
I remember thinking your dad was going to kill me. I'm like a grown man, and I'm like, oh no.
You're like, what's that smell?
I was like, I remember grinding on it for a second, and then like it just stopping, and then your dad was like totally cool about it. He just like fixed it up with some like.
You were more embarrassed than anybody.
Oh my god, I was beside myself,
that's
man.
Fine.
Leave it to Ron to tear it up, but he was cool. He took it in stride.
I was thinking more of things like when you would put together like your coffee table but use the wrong screws, and so you're grinding down
yeah
screws, and they pop
or
through
yeah,
the
it would
top.
pop through the top. Yeah, you know, I've gotten
the long
so much
screws instead of the short
it's just
screws.
you know, like I mean, we're talking about like growing up in my childhood. Like I wasn't, you know, like nobody showed me anything, so it took experience. Like now I'm so much better at putting things together.
Yeah.
You know, like I put everything in the house together now, and it seems to be holding together okay, and I'm not like damaging them real bad. But you're totally right, man. I remember that coffee table where like I'm screwing, you know, and it's kind of a cheap coffee table too, because you know it's like one of my first moving out, and so it's not like exactly strong wood anyway. So you know, like I just punched through right through the top.
You just kept grinding down on
and it cracked. The surface cracked, so like I glue it back on, so it just looks so terrible.
Yeah, there was something or other. I don't remember what it was, but you put together recently, and Laura even told me like, "Oh, Ron did this," and I looked at him like, "Hey, I'm impressed." You know,
I thought you were gonna say like, "I don't want to sit on that now."
You did it. You did it right.
Thank you. Just experience. It took a little experience. Oh hell, but yeah. So you know, it wouldn't surprise you that I would damage some stuff like that, not really thinking about what I'm doing.
Yeah, because
I probably
don't
what
even
it
know what
was.
you're talking about. I never had a problem with any of them.
Well, I didn't have good tools, so like I said, I'm back there with a butter knife, and I'm kind of struggling to get it twisted, and I probably would just get impatient and jerk it down too early or something. Who knows?
You probably ripped it off.
I probably. I'm like, it's really delicate. You're like, yeah, dummy, because you're not supposed to rip it off like while you're trying to unscrew with a butter knife. Fair enough. Sorry that I, threw Atari under the bus. Shoddy like equipment. It's like, why can't I just sand straight through this cord? Come on, man, this is cheap stuff. So is it my turn to go number 2? Pick my second game.
I'm done with Qbert.
All right. Qbert was fun.
Yeah.
And I thought about it being on my list too, but
I guess the Qbert part, I guess, was missing Ugg and Wrong Way, but it pretty much had everything else.
I love that game. Played it tons and tons myself. Okay.
All right, number 2.
Number 2 for me is a game that, you know, you're not going to be able to talk much about because, you know, it comes to find out, or I've come to find out, that not too many people really played this game like I did. But it's Vanguard.
Yeah, you're always talking about Vanguard. Anytime we're talking about our favorite arcade games, you talk about Vanguard.
Yeah, bring up Vanguard.
I don't know.
You know, it was at more than a couple of different convenience stores around my neighborhood, you know, growing up. You know, so I know it was out there. But it's funny that you guys...
Yeah, I've heard of it. I just never played it, really.
Yeah, you're in a spaceship, and, you know, they would show, like, a little map before the game starts, and, you know, you just work your way through that map. And it has, like, levels, and not a lot of games back in those days had levels.
It has, like, levels.
It has levels, but not a lot of games had levels. It was just, like, a screen that just continuously goes on and on and on. This game, like, I felt like you were actually on an adventure, you know?
Yeah?
Yeah, it was really cool. And I was, like, looking at the box art, and it looks like something's right out of the Black Hole, like that old Disney movie from back in the day. But I remember, like, so well, like, you know...
With the little R2-D2 rip
Robbie?
off that...
No, not Robbie. What was his name?
That floats around and...
Yeah, he looked
like a
Goomba.
flying R2-D2.
Yeah, well, yeah, he was like a flying R2-D2, just kind of a rip-off of R2-D2. What was his name?
I don't know.
I don't know. Maybe it was just like some numbers. But I remember that red robot too that had like the propeller hand or whatever.
Oh yeah, that's like the only thing other than flying R2-D2. That's the one thing I remember about that movie.
Oh,
that
was awesome.
Yeah, and like the guy's like holding up like I don't know, like a newspaper or something. I don't even remember.
It was like a pillow or I don't know what. Yeah, but it was like shredding it.
But, oh man, that's like
terrifying.
As a kid, you're like, oh,
Maximilian!
Now, I do think he just had like letters and numbers for some reason, but I haven't seen that movie since the 80s, early 80s. But I remember watching that a lot as a kid. It was cool back then. Probably it's terrible now. But, back to Vanguard. It had those like levels, like you'd go left, right, and then it would switch it up. Like you'd go for a while, and then you start going from bottom to top. And it had like this cool thing called Rainbow Zone. And I remember in the arcade, like it had this speech, like you'd get to that level and it would go Rainbow Zone, and you had these little like floaty balls going from left to right.
But the 2600 didn't have this speech.
It didn't have the speech, but it had pretty much all the levels.
Yeah.
So it was a pretty close port. In fact, I really only remember playing the arcade a handful of times because it was harder.
Yeah.
But the 2600 beat it numerous times, like hundreds and hundreds of times.
Did it actually have an ending?
Yeah, it was kind of like it had this Star Wars ending where you get to a final like boss and you had to like shoot a torpedo like at him like through like some force field stuff. Mm-hmm. If you land the shot, then you win.
That's cool.
Yeah, and I think it just starts over again. But it was really, really fun. And I remember too, like when you had like invisibility from time to time, like like a star in Mario, you could just kind of hit it and you could run into enemies and kill them, and it would do this like Superman kind of song, like da da na 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 na. I mean, I know that's not Superman, but it reminded me of Superman always. Yeah. I'm just like ramming into stuff and having a great time. But I know you can't really speak to Vanguard, but you should check it out. Like since you got the emulation, give it a try. I think you'll like it.
Pull it up. I did add, like when we were talking about Genesis games, and I think we mentioned. I don't know if we mentioned this or not, but I know you and I have talked that like Gunstar Hero. Everybody talks about Gunstar Hero being like really good Genesis game.
Yeah, it didn't make our list because neither one of us played it, and we didn't want to disingenuously say, "Well, that's on our list."
Yeah, so I added that onto like a list of my emulators, like for Genesis, and I did try that out. Yeah, it's neat. It's like Contra kind of. It's cool. The graphics are.
It's like Contra. It reminds me a little bit too of like Metal Slug, which is just really awesome version of Contra. I guess
it's like cartoon Contra.
But yeah, it's cool. I assumed I would liked it if I ever got around to playing it, but we're at that stage now where we really only play those games for memories of like back in the day. So if we skipped over it when it was popular and new.
Yeah, because it's. You're used to better games now, and so you only played the old games for the nostalgia value,
right.
Really.
It's why I've never gone back and played like a game like Mario RPG. Because even though I understand like it's a cool game, it was a really cool game for its time, and it's up my alley probably for the style of RPGs that I like to play. Not too heavy, not like JRPG style, and with like characters that I care about already. I'd probably dig it, but I mean, I probably just couldn't get over like the fact that the graphics are just so dated.
I like the graphics on Mario RPG.
Yeah, they're cool. I like them, and I thought they were really neat back in the day.
That pre-rendered kind of look. But anyway, 2600.
Yeah, back to 2600. Yeah, we're gonna skip around. It's just gonna remind us of other things that we like. That's how we roll here on BitGeek. All right, so that's all I got to say about Vanguard. Thank you for indulging me on that. Like I say, it's another one of those games that I really didn't get to mention in our arcade episode. So Atari's Redemption, it's a good little place. And from here on out, we're going to have more, Atari games, I guess you'd say.
Yeah. Not
your arcade ports. So what do you got for number 3, Nick?
Well, okay. So number 3, I can't, I feel like this game needs a little bit of love.
Okay.
Yeah, because it's not as bad as everybody makes it out to be. Yeah, it's not the greatest game either, but it's just not as bad. And E.T., the extraterrestrial.
I'll just say right now, wasn't a fan.
We played a lot of E.T. back in the day, and the biggest problem I think with E.T. and why everybody hates it is that they just don't understand the mechanics. And because people complain that they can't get out of a pit, they always fall into a pit.
So there were mechanics.
Well, yeah, I mean, you got to know how the game was made, really.
How long did it take for that game to get made? Was it 3 weeks?
Like a week or something.
So they paid through the nose, I'm sure, for the license.
When you think about how quickly this game was programmed, start to finish,
Give it a break.
Give it a break. The poor guy that made it.
Development teams have cycles of 4 and 5 years nowadays, with multiple people on a team. 30, 40, 50 people to make a game. But this guy, was it one guy?
Yeah, I think so.
I think it was.
And I can't remember
Isn't that
now
amazing?
who it was, but
Atari's already making money hand over fist at this point, and this just goes to show why that crashed. They're making money hand over fist, and they put this guy under the gun to get it out, I guess, because it was a timely thing. We got to get it out around the movie, I suppose.
And they
or the holiday.
They manufactured I don't remember how many times more ET cartridges than even 2600 consoles that were out in the wild.
Did they not keep track of how many they sold or something?
I don't know, but it's ridiculous.
That's insane.
What are people gonna do? Buy multiple ETs just because it's ET?
The hubris, man. Oh, this game is so great. You're gonna have an ET cartridge for every bedroom. For every TV, you'll buy more Atari 2600s just to keep up with all of those. That's insane, dude. Yeah, famously buried in a landfill in New Mexico in 1984, I guess is when they buried all those.
Yeah, something
and it's
like
totally legit. It is real.
Yeah, they dug them up.
Yep. Did you see the Netflix documentary?
Yeah.
They're actually there. I found
it very interesting too.
It's insanely interesting. You guys should check that out. I don't know if it's still available on Netflix necessarily, but look for it because it's cool. Yeah. It's this great little thing that you're oh no way, that's got to be urban legend. It was told in such a way that it seemed like urban legend.
Yeah, for the longest time, people were always this is what they say. Nobody knows for sure, but yeah, it ended up being true.
Yep, they found them. They found the darn thing. I don't know necessarily
and it's
the number.
It's not just ET. I mean, they dug up a lot of old stuff. Just old stock that that didn't get sold.
I don't remember why they buried them. Why did they bury them? I'm sure they covered it in the documentary, but I don't remember why they decided to bury them.
Well, just so much.
It's just garbage, and that's what you do in a landfill, maybe.
So much unsold product that was just sitting in a warehouse.
Yeah. Maybe that's just how landfills work. You just bury stuff. It's not like they were we're not only going to throw it away, but it needs to be underground.
What are you envisioning? They went out at 3 a.m. or something, dug a hole.
Yeah. Well, there was a procession, everybody drove out there in their cars. They put it in the ground. Yeah, I have no idea how landfills work. That's probably not all that unusual, But
when I was talking about everybody falling in the pits and
talk about the game.
Yeah, because to rise up out of the pit, he raises up his head, and he floats up out of the pit.
Because that's what he does in the movie.
And then when you get out of the pit, he lowers his head back down, and it's at this point that you're vulnerable again to fall in.
Right.
Well, when you come up out of the pit, there'll be a pixel of his foot that'll still be touching the pit when he lowers his head down, and he'll immediately fall back down. So if you keep, but naturally, everybody's gonna just they're pushing up on their joystick, and so they're floating up, and they're pushing up, and so they're always moving north when they come back to the map screen and going up out of the pit, and if you just do nothing but keep pushing up, you're just gonna keep falling back down.
That's crazy.
Well, if you come out move out to the left or right or down even once you get back to the map screen. When he lowers
You're not going to fall back in the pit.
Yeah, when he lowers his head down.
But that's just bad programming.
He had a week.
He had a week, yeah.
He had a week.
You imagine, like, you know...
So, yeah, I mean, I'm not going to say that... I mean, yeah, that is kind of an overlooked, you know, bad programming.
Well, your point is, it's a fun game if you get over that.
When you get over that and you realize, oh, this is what I have to do to get around that. And yes, again, you shouldn't have to get around these things, but he did it in a week. Yeah.
Well, and another thing is, too, and we've alluded to this in the past, like if you got a game, and games were expensive back then, you were stuck with that game. It's not like you could just like go buy another game or, you know, return it for store credit.
That was the big thing, is so everybody thought that it was like defective, and everybody's returning them.
Well, that's true. I guess
returning
they could just
all these ET cartridges left and right. Well, and that's what the landfill was. It's all the returned ones, I think.
Oh, you're right, dude. They couldn't resell them.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because they had to go like through these like testing, like different phases. Like all of the returned ones had to go through.
You're
testing,
absolutely right, dude. I think that's what it was.
and it's not worth it.
Those were all the returned versions. Holy crap! You're absolutely right.
But yeah, I mean, it was cool too that the world, the overworld, it was like in a cube, like every kind of map connected to each other. Like if you laid it out on a cube, and it would kind of, you know, if you were looking at it 3-dimensionally, that you knew like where to go. You know, wherever you were, like if you were at the spot where the forest is, then you could know, you know, if I go north, it'll be this board. If I go to the, you know, east, west, south, whatever, then if you knew like 3-dimensionally how it was laid out, then you could find your way around.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, so you could find all the different phone pieces and call home and
so that was the end game, is to find all the pieces of the phone.
You could actually beat E.T. There was like a start finish to E.T., which, and actually I did it recently, because when I was setting up my emulator, I put a bunch of Atari 2600 games in it. I fired up E.T. and I beat it right there. The first playthrough, let's play E.T. Got all the pieces, phoned home, picked me up. You just gotta know how to play it.
Just gotta know how to play it. It's not the game's fault. I mean, it doesn't help that it wasn't put together, but it was, like you said, it was like a week.
It's not the best game in the world.
So don't get all up in arms and mad just because Nick was like, he's not trolling you guys, you know, like throwing ET in there. It's a misunderstood game.
It's a misunderstood game. I just feel like it needs a little bit of credit.
Fair enough, dude. Fair enough. Because when I mention not my next game, but I have some games coming up that's probably responsible partially for the crash too.
And it's like you said, though, you know, you made the comment before that, you know, you played what you had. You know, we didn't really have all that many games, and so we had E.T. We played the heck out of it.
So you guys didn't think it was defective. You just were like, no, I'm going to keep playing this thing.
I'm going to keep playing it, and I'm going to figure it out. We figured it out.
Well, plus it's E.T. I mean, like, fewer things were as popular in, like, that time period than E.T. Yeah. And, like, even I saw that in the movie theaters back in the day. So you want to like this game, you know, a lot. It would be like the equivalent of us being, like, older and wanting to really, really like a Turtle game or something. Or me, Ghostbusters game.
The more frustrating thing about that E.T. game to me was not falling in the pits. It was when those, like... There were the two enemies. There was like the guy and the lady, and they would like carry you away. And I'm like, let me go. Or they take your phone pieces away. Like one of them will carry you back to like a certain spot, and another one will like take a phone piece away.
Who are these people? The government?
Yeah, it's like the government officials or something. Like FBI agent or something.
They're not going to test on you. They're just going to like inconvenience you a little bit and throw you back to the start.
I feel like... like maybe like the guy was like an FBI agent. I don't know who the lady was. I forget. But yeah, I mean, I found them to be more annoying than falling in the pits because they'll just like walk right through the pit. They're just like they'll just beeline right at you. They're coming,
of course.
And so you start running fast to get away from them, and of course you'll fall in a pit at that time because you're trying to go too fast. But anyway,
sounds like you had a lot of fun with the game, even and it's certainly it's polarizing to say the least.
I played a lot of ET back in the day.
Like I said, I didn't care for it, but I was one of the people that just didn't understand it. And I don't think I'd bought it, so I'm sure I just played it at a friend's house. And, I was like, oh, hey, ET, I want to play that. Put it in for a few seconds. God, this sucks. And, take it out and play something I I'm better at, like Space Invaders. All right, so is that all we got for ET?
Yeah, that's all I've got for ET.
All right, we're going to move on to number 3 for me, and that is Berzerk. So Berzerk, if you're not familiar with that game, is kind of this cool, you're in a maze and you got these neat Buck Rogers creatures, with the little eyes that go side to side, and you're trying to just move through the map, but you have to kill all those robots. And, the walls were, electrified or something.
You could actually, shoot at 8 different angles, too.
You could.
That was cool.
Yeah, you get those, weird diagonally looking bullets going down.
Yeah.
But I love that game. It was really fun. I don't think it had an end. You just probably continued.
No, I don't think so. You just kind of go from, maze to maze to maze.
But I love the sound effects of that game. It's so Atari when I was, watching a video of it just to get familiar with it again a bit. Because I was I remember liking Berzerk, but is it one of those games where I just have fond memories, but watch some video of it and I really didn't care for it all that much. And no, I remember this game, and I remember all the sound effects and loving the robots, and it had a cool look to it.
And when you would touch the wall and you would get electrified,
yeah,
that was startling.
It was,
every time.
dude.
Yeah,
it was it was like playing Operation. Whenever no matter how many times you play Operation, you go in for that wishbone. It's coming.
Yeah, you'd hit a wall and you'd jump.
But I like too that the robots would actually hit the wall and they would blow up.
Yeah, I forgot about that. That's true.
Yeah. So, that was just basically the game. Yeah. I remember the robots at first, the bullets be they're real slow, the bullets, and they get faster and a little more tricky as you go along. But,
And then that smiling face would come at you, Evil Otto.
Yeah. God, I forgot about the name. Yeah, you're familiar with Berzerk.
Oh, sure. I know Berzerk.
Yeah. Let's talk about the box art image for a second.
Oh, man, the box art, I always looked at the box art different than what it actually was. To me, there's a guy that's shooting a robot on the box art, right? And he's shooting through the robot's arm, but I never saw that as the arm. The shoulder, because it's got these circles, on the shoulder.
Yes.
That I guess is I don't know, a pivot point or something. I don't know.
Totally, yeah.
But it just seemed like the circles were eyes, and it was and where the arm was coming down and it was getting shot through, it was puke or something. That robot's going whoa.
Yeah, it was this really intense orange, looked like lava. Yeah, he's barfing, and you ruined the illusion for me because we've been friends for years. But I guess we've just never talked about Atari 2600 a whole lot.
Hey, man, what about that Berzerk box art? Yeah, it just never came up.
Never came up. So when you're explaining this, you're almost kind of sheepishly telling me oh, man, I never saw that for what it was. And then the whole time in my head, I'm going, what are you talking about? So and I pull up the image and I see to me, it looks like a giant bug with, you said, the pivot points were eyes, and he's barfing the lava. And it's almost like it's barfing him on the head. It's just about to hit him.
Yeah. Every time I saw that picture, I thought that his shoulder was the head.
And now I can't unsee it. Now I just see the robot a little bit. So it's so funny. It's I'm realizing, I don't know when you actually started realizing. Maybe it was just recently when you were putting that together for your brother.
Well, it was before that.
Was it before that?
But it wasn't when I was a kid, though. I can tell you that.
And that's some more great Atari box art cover that. The illustrations, I really enjoy those. Yeah. It's so 70s, but I don't know how else to describe it. Then it just looks like album covers of its day. It's before, Nintendo made pixel art image like the thing. That's just what you got. But anyways, no more talking about the imagery of the cartridges. Berzerk, very simple game. I don't know what else to say about it. I love the sound effects. I thought it was a game that I could play again and again and again. It had a lot of replay value. But I guess a lot of those Atari games did have replay value because there was really no end to it.
Yeah, I mean, it's all about the scores.
All about the scores. High scores. Big deal back in the day.
Yeah, and that we would used to like write the scores down
Oh,
in the
yeah.
instruction manual.
Yeah, because it didn't save them. Like, there was no battery backup in your games. You just kind of had to either take a Polaroid of it, I guess, or, write it down and go on the honor system.
Yeah, we didn't have that.
I don't think we did either. The first cameras I remember in my house were those like wind-up-y things, like take a snap a picture. They probably cost $20, disposable kind. Although you guys had a video camera in your house. I used to think you guys were rich. It's like they had a video camera.
That was like, I don't know, late 80s though. That was...
I know. Well, but I remember like America's Funniest. We're going on tangent again. I remember when America's Funniest Home Videos was like super popular at their time, and you guys actually. I remember thinking, oh man, the rights could actually enter to win like the money. Like if they were to have some hilarious situation where Mark got hit in the nards or something. But you guys never did.
But
so.
yeah, and that thing was giant too because
it was like totally
it was
like
one
late
of those
80s.
that actually like fit like the full size VHS tapes in it.
Well, it was over the shoulder, right?
Yeah.
You held the thing like a bazooka, and it had like the eye finder came around and met your eye. But I don't know. You're talking about cameras. I just remember thinking, like, man, the rights have got to be rich. Little did I know. I don't know what it cost. But Berzerk, that's my number 3. Nick, what do you got for number 4?
Number 4. Oh, a game I love, but I actually never owned, and so I played at a friend's house all the time.
That qualifies.
But yeah, Keystone Capers.
Never heard of it until just now.
Love that game. It was so fun. It's like you're like this little like Bobby like little policeman, and you're running through like a mall to catch. Like,
is that what that was? They were escalators?
Oh yeah.
Okay. That's Atari 2600.
Yeah. It's like a mall. There'll be like shopping carts that you can jump over, and like you get to one point, there's like an elevator that you have to choose whether, do I wait for the elevator to come down, or do I just like run past it and like run for the escalator and go up it and run on by? But and like there'll be like planes flying that you gotta duck under sometimes, but. You gotta catch the criminal, which I don't know if he just like escaped from jail or
like
what.
The black
because
and white.
he's already wearing the black and white striped outfit.
What threw me, because why would a guy break out of prison and then go to the mall? It doesn't make any sense.
It's just like look at me, I'm the bad guy.
I guess he was like stealing like some actual like non-prison clothes or something. That was his first thought.
And the funny thing though, when you were watching a video of it, because the guy that was playing on the video did exactly like I did every single time I play that game. When you run up on the bad guy to catch him, because all you gotta do is just like, because your guy would run faster, so you're like always like.
Yeah, the crook got a big head start, right?
Yeah, he's got a big head start, but he's slower than you are. So you keep gaining on him. So, and then eventually, you just touch him and you've caught him, and then you just kind of restart it, and it's a little bit harder now, and you just do the whole thing over again.
Right.
But always, I would jump onto him. Like when I would get on him, I'd jump up on him. And
I got your ass.
Yeah, I got you. And the guy playing the video, he did that every single time too. He jumped up on him.
It warms your heart to know that people play it the same way that you did. That's awesome, dude. It looks like a fun game. Like I've never seen it or played it, but I bet if I had,
it's
I would
really
liked
fun.
It. And it's an Activision game. And you know what I really liked about that game too is I noticed there was that little map on the bottom.
Yeah.
You could see in relation to there was a little white dot that was the bad guy.
Yeah,
and you were the
you can kind of see like what floor he's on.
Yeah,
and you can also see the elevator, like because the elevator is like right in the middle, and so you can see like there's a light for like each floor, so you know what floor it's on to kind of judge like, okay, I'm gonna wait for the elevator here and meet him. Oh, and he turns around, he'll start running the other direction. Like if he's running like towards the elevator and you like go up And he's not.
He'll change direction.
He's not just gonna like meet you. He's not just gonna keep running at you. He's gonna be like, "Oh no," and he'll turn around and go the other way.
Now, will he get back up to the top again somehow? Like lose you, or how does that work?
Yeah, if he makes it up to the very top, like the attic or whatever it is, and if he gets to the end of it, then you've lost. Like,
Okay.
You lose a life or a game over. I forget what. But.
I was having fun watching it and listening to you like describe the game, and just seeing like the graphics were pretty revolutionary. It seemed to me like for the time. It was a game I'm sad I missed.
They're nice, clean graphics.
Yeah, totally. I totally know what's there. I mean, like I laugh. It's like, oh, that was an escalator, but it looks like an escalator.
Yeah.
So, man, Keystone Capers.
Yeah.
Good game.
Very simple game. I mean, it's one of those where the simplicity is really, I think, what makes it good.
Mm-hmm.
Just one of those.
Yeah, just a cop trying to catch a bad guy, and you're just, it's like playing tag. You're just chasing after the guy.
Yeah, it's fun.
Cool. All right. So my turn. My number 4.
Number 4.
Is a game that I initially forgot about, but I'm like listing out games like, well, what could be in my 5? And, like games like Combat came up in my head. I'm like, well, I got to put Combat in because that's just like a classic. But then I saw the name of a game and it totally rushed back. Like it washed over me like a wave, like how much fun I had playing this game. And I'm sure you never heard of it, but it's called Plaque Attack. And it sounds like a total waste of a game. Like, was that made by Crest or something? We were talking about like everybody had a game. No, it was another Activision game. And had really good graphics. And you're basically, it's going to sound so stupid. Okay, you're inside a big mouth. Like the top of the level is like gums, and then there's like 4 teeth at the top, and then like gums at the bottom, and like 4 more teeth. And it's set up like Space Invaders kind of. And
I
you're
like
this like
that you said it has really good graphics because I'm picturing where there's like, this guy's mouth has like 4 teeth on the bottom,
Yeah.
and 4 teeth on the
he
top,
didn't
or something.
look. He had a bad grill. Okay, the graphics were good, but he didn't have a full like mouth of teeth. Okay,
With big gaps in
he
between.
did, man. It's a Michael Strahan all the way across. But they were clean graphics. Okay, what they put on there. But they so you're this like floating tube of toothpaste, and the point of the game is all this junk food's gonna try and get to the teeth and cause them like rot them more or less. In fact, like there's cheeseburgers like floating, they're coming down like Space Invaders sort of. You have to shoot it with the toothpaste, and as you're playing, like you only have so much toothpaste, like the tube is like rolling up, so like,
Oh, I didn't realize that.
yeah, so if you're playing it, if you just shoot willy-nilly, like it's going to be all the way up at the end. You're not going to have any more toothpaste. And then like the cheeseburger will touch the tooth and it starts turning yellow, and then it eventually like falls out and goes away. So it gets crazy. Like it starts out with like 3 slow-moving cheeseburgers, and you
It looked like Space Invaders in a mouth.
Yeah, that's a good way to describe it. But it was fun. It played really well. It's kind of like Asteroids, where you move your ship around or whatever, but you can move the toothpaste around. Like I said, I know it sounds like something they'd give to you free.
Did it always shoot up, or did
Well, okay, so like level 1 is always shooting up, and the food will come down. Level 2, you'd be facing down the other way. So like every level, like you would switch.
flip-flop and focus on that set of
Mm-hmm.
teeth?
Exactly. So you couldn't like rotate it or anything. I guess that was just too much to ask. But man, it was fun.
Yeah, we couldn't rotate Pac-Man, so...
No, hell no. But, I was surprised to see it was made by, I think, Activision. So, I mean, Activision has like a dirty name nowadays, I suppose, with microtransactions being the way they are.
No.
But I mean, for the 2600, we've mentioned a couple of Activision games.
Activision had the best 2600 games.
They were great. They were great games. And this game was also great. So, but again, it's probably one of those games where, like, if you're looking in a store, you're like, Plaque Attack. God, man, they're just throwing anything at us now. And I didn't buy it in a store. It was like, like kids will trade. It was one of those deals where, like, this kid was like, well, I'll trade you Plaque Attack for your, Moon Patrol or whatever. And I'm like, no way. It's like, okay, I'll give you Plaque Attack and this other game for Moon Patrol. All right, let's do it. I'm sick of Moon Patrol. Why not? And I put it in. I'm like, damn, this is fun. I'm like having a great time with this game. And I played it again and again and again. And it's funny too, because like I said, like I had not thought about this game in so long.
I traded Transformers, but I never traded 2600 games.
Well, I mean, by this point, it's funny too. Like I talk about trading. I don't know what the system was, but I ended up with like 3 or 4 versions of Combat. And I guess that was just like thrown in like in baseball trades. Like we'll give you a good
I'll give you Plaque Attack, Combat.
Yes. And I'll give you a couple of like guys who are like probably not ever going to make it to the major leagues.
What are you thinking? Well, I've already got Combat, but
it's another
that's
game.
2 games to my 1. So.
Dude, I you know what? But I think about Logan nowadays, and he would totally take the same Hot Wheel over and over again. And not like, I mean, I would understand if like you wanted like fire trucks or police cars. Like it makes sense to have the same car. But he'll get like my mom will get him a car, but then like she'll just not think and like buying the same car again. And she'll go to give it to him. And I'm like, Logan, you already have that car. He's like, I don't care, I want it. He just wants to open it and possess it. Like he just wants to possess this car. So he just accepts it. So maybe that's the same theory in play. Like I'm just like, I want to possess more Atari 2600 games than I had before. I don't care if I have duplicates. I'll trade 3 of these for a bad game later down the road. It's currency.
I'll trade you Keystone Capers for 3 Combats.
Yes,
deal.
And I know I've mentioned that to you in the past, and I think you've always looked at me like, and I think I even like passed it on to you like this thing that everybody does. And it seems to me like you're just like, I know nobody had multiple versions of Combat. Only you had multiple versions of Combat.
Well, I do now because a friend that I used to work with was just like, I'm going to throw away all these 2600 games. Do you want them? Yeah, sure, I'll take them. So,
and that's probably...
There's a few games now that I've got duplicates of just because I got from her.
And I think that's part of it, too. Like, I probably bought, like, a lot of games in a yard sale or something, and it just came with Combat, maybe. Yeah. But I remember having, like, just so many copies of Combat. So, anyway, that's my number 4, Plaque Attack. Nick, what's your number 5?
All right, man. Number 5, best Atari 2600 game.
5 is usually reserved for
there
this.
is.
Yeah.
Pitfall. Pitfall, that's just a good game.
I remember the commercial. I remember seeing that commercial back
I
in the
don't
day.
remember the commercial.
Yeah. I'll have to... I don't know if I'll throw up a video of it or not, but just to show you, like, how much video games had crept into, like pop culture, I remember seeing that, like, watching TV. Like, holy crap, there is a commercial for a video game on TV. But it was so popular. I mean, it was the killer app. It was the Street Fighter 2 for Super Nintendo. It was the game that everybody wanted to have, and it was a lot of fun.
I like that. You could go either left or right, and just kind of like choose your path and run and swing the vines across lakes and whatever, and jump on alligators' heads.
Yeah.
Fall down that pit and jump over scorpions.
It felt like you were playing Indiana Jones.
Yeah,
it really did with that, like, swinging on the vines or whatever.
And then you'd find the treasure and pick up the treasure. But I learned also that because usually by nature you go from left to right.
Right. Video games have taught us that somewhere. Maybe Pitfall was the first game.
Well, and but I learned though with Pitfall that when you died, you would come down on the left side of the screen. And so if you chose to go left to right, and you can't, your timing is off and you're having trouble jumping across these alligators, then and one eats you and you die. Well, you've got to do it over again because you've fallen on the left side, and so now you still have to do it. Well, if you turn the other way, and you're going from right to left, and so you're running towards the left side now, if you happen to die, it'll put you safely on the other side. And
so
you
it
can
just
move
would
on.
reverse the direction you fell down on where you started.
Yeah, so you could get past hard things and maybe progress a little bit more. Like if there was like a certain thing that you just really had a lot of trouble with.
It's like a little built-in exploit.
Yeah. So yeah, it would put you. I mean, you'd lose a life.
You would lose a
obviously,
life, yeah.
But you would safely be
So
on
you
the
really
other
lose
side.
2 lives, really. Like you lose the
Yeah.
life, you die, then you lose a life again to get
Because
across
otherwise,
things,
you may just you keep dying in that same spot, and just end up losing like all 3 lives or whatever. At that
lives
same
were
spot.
precious, like with arcade games and stuff. Like you could continue. No, like there really weren't continues like leaving off because games weren't linear like that, like they are now. You just started over. Your score started over.
Oh yeah,
That's
game
just the
over was
point.
game over.
Yeah. So like in playing Galaga, I want to get my ship captured, but I know that I'm really kind of throwing away a life.
So I definitely got my highest score by doing that, going towards the left and collecting treasure that way rather than going to the right.
Cool. I don't know if I did that, honestly.
Because you don't think.
Because I don't think that sounds so mean. I didn't think about that. Yeah, I was the guy like unscrewing things with butter knives. I know I'm not the only guy that did that. You people out there were using butter knives too. It's like a flathead screwdriver. Come on. But yeah, Pitfall was cool. I think it was like one of those first games that felt like it had not a purpose, but you weren't just stuck on one screen. Like you were moving along.
Yeah.
And I liked that it had 2 levels. Like you could go down a ladder or whatever, and then you're like on a sub level with the scorpion.
The bottom was so hard though. It was really hard to jump over the scorpion, and it seems like too
that tail was like up there.
You would try to use it like maybe as a shortcut to bypass a lot of stuff that was up high that might be hard, but like you'd run along, and even if you could jump over the scorpion, sometimes you would like run into just a brick wall. You had to just turn around and go all the way back and climb up the ladder.
Because I thought I was bypassing all that crap. All I did was make it harder for myself.
Yeah, so like the bottom, really, the bottom just kind of sucked, and there's really no good reason to ever use the bottom, in my opinion.
Yeah, well, unless you just thought it was fun to go down there, I guess.
Yeah.
But yeah, I see what you're saying. Let's see what else about Pitfall. It's funny too. It's like Pitfall was like such a huge property then, but it's one of those franchises that hasn't like been kind. Like video games hasn't been kind to Pitfall over the years. There was a resurgence in like the PlayStation.
The Super Nintendo,
era.
they came out with like a new version. What was it called? Pitfall 2? Yeah, Pitfall 2, the Mayan
2.
Adventure.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that was kind of neat. It was a fun little game.
I think they were like.
It was funny too. Like if you beat the game, because like I think the whole point of the game was like you had to save your dad, and so then like when you get to the end of the game, it unveils that your dad is like the square guy, like from the 2600 game.
Oh really?
He looks like a blocky square guy, but like the game is now Super Nintendo graphics and everything.
Yeah,
it's fun. You look up the ending.
It's funny. Cool. Very meta. But I do remember when they also tried to bring it back out again, like on the 32-bit consoles and stuff. Like there was it in 3D or not? I'm trying to remember. All I remember is it seems like they cast like some kind of known actor to be the face of him.
I don't remember.
And I want to say it was maybe Bruce Campbell or something. But there was a push, but the game sucked. Like the game was not fun, and that's why I'm thinking maybe it was a 3D game.
I only remember the Super Nintendo one.
Yeah,
and I think it came out on Genesis too.
They tried to make Pitfall a thing again, but that game sucks so hard, and they put a lot into it that I think people were just like, "Nah, we're done with Pitfall. We're on to bigger, better graphics and stuff now." So, but it'd be fun to pop in Pitfall and play it now. I'm sure you played it with the emulators.
Oh yeah,
from time to time.
Fun.
Is there an ending in Pitfall?
No, you just keep going. You just keep. It's got a timer.
I remember the timer. Yeah.
You just run until the time runs out.
Yep. Cool. Shall we go to my final one?
Yep.
Another game that you really never play, which surprises me. But I know I'm not alone. Yars Revenge.
Oh Yeah, I know, like, I'm familiar with that one as being, like, a favorite amongst 2600 fans.
Mm-hmm.
But, yeah, I never really played it.
You know, like sometimes when you come across a game and it feels very much like a hidden gem.
Yeah.
I always felt like Yars Revenge was one of those hidden gems that not a lot of people played or knew about. But boy, was I wrong! Like it shows up a lot in like people's tens, like
I
top
remember
20
like
lists.
the box art, and I mean it looked cool. The
Yeah.
box art looked cool. The
box art-
game itself, I couldn't really ever figure out.
It's
As
a
far
s-
as just from the pictures I've seen.
Yeah, it's just one single screen. Okay, so on the left there's you, and the center there's like a force field,
Yeah.
and on the right there's like
Because I think that's the thing that always got me. Like when I would see a screenshot, is like it looks like just like garbled mess, like a glitch or something.
yeah, it looks like a static TV or whatever. But the thing about the force field is so you start over here to the left and you're trying to peck away at a shield of the bad guy on the right, and then you keep pecking at it like Super Breakout, like that kind of deal. Like one shot like puts a hole in the shield, but that it keeps moving, so like the holes are kind of moving too.
Yeah.
So you want to get it open enough, or also like Space Invaders when you're
Kind of
shooting
like
at.
the that part in the Tron arcade game where you're trying to hit like the master computer.
It's exactly like it.
And,
Yeah.
Yeah, you're like hitting the
So you
shield.
can't just
Like
you can't just
rotating around.
continuously shoot a spot open, because if you shoot 3 or 4 times in a row, one shot will hit, but that'll go up. Another shot will hit, that'll go up. So it just kind of becomes like just randomly taking out pieces of the shield. So it's kind of hard to explain. But yeah, you're right. Like the Tron. So you get enough pieces of the shield taken out, you finally can hit the bad guy. But the bad guy has this like little minion thing that kind of chases you around the screen, and it can kill you just from a touch, like so many other games. So the force field, if you want to be impervious to the little guy that chases you around, you can go in there. So you're safe in that like little strip. Like he can't kill you inside of there. But the little dude, the enemy guy, every few seconds he'll kind of get aggravated and he'll shoot out at you. Like this, like he'll turn into some ball and just shoot out from right to left off the screen, and then reappear back in his like little safety place. Mm-hmm. So like that's just all the game is. Like, you start out, he's got a full shield, you're pecking away at his shield, you try to get to a point where you can get it open enough to get the shot, and you kill him. And it's just over and over and over and over again. It's just very simple. But man, it's addictive. It's like really, really addictive. It's like one of those first games where I just couldn't put down. It's like, man, I know this game is really simple. There's not a lot to this game. Except for high score, of course, just like with any arcade game. Yeah. But I just really dug it. And I guess you're supposed to be like this. I don't know if you're in a spaceship or if you are a big bug creature, but you're shooting stuff out. I don't know if it's like your snout, but like the box art cover does make it look like you're a creature or something.
It's like a mosquito,
big mosquito
shooting out like marbles or something.
Yeah, it's real trippy, dude. Real trippy.
Pinballs.
Yeah, I don't know.
Because they're all shiny, like silvery, shiny looking.
Exactly. Again, it looks like something that could be on a Rush album cover. But that's just Yars Revenge. It's just again and again and again repeating over and over and over. And but it's a hook. It's got hooks. Like it'll get you. So that's pretty much Yars Revenge in a nutshell.
And I think that what was it that was it when David Crane was at the Arcade Expo? Is that his name?
The Pitfall guy?
That he was talking about Yars Revenge, and
I don't remember this.
Oh, you might have left maybe.
Yeah, I had to go.
Yeah, because he was talking about it a little bit, and he was saying like it got its name. I forget if it was like the boss or somebody. Somebody was named Ray, and they flipped that around to be Yars.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah.
Cool.
That's where that name came from.
Well, there's your Nick's factoid for the episode.
I have factoids.
Yeah.
Oh, here's another factoid.
Oh, yeah.
When we got our 2600, I mentioned before, it was in the 80s when we got ours. And, we were still playing our 2600 well into after Nintendo Entertainment System is already out. Sega Master System is now out. Because you'd already talked about it had such a long life.
Yeah.
Well, there was at one point I was at a Toys R Us, and I'm just kind of browsing around, whatever, and I noticed a Sega Master System controller had it's the control pad that's a lot like a NES style. It's
I know where you're going with
the
this.
2 buttons.
Yeah.
And the it wasn't really a cross pad so much, but anyway, it's a lot like a Nintendo controller though. But anyway, I noticed on the end of the plug, and I forget how many pins it has now, but it I was looking at it and I thought it's shaped a lot like the 2600 control port is. And so I thought to myself, I'm doing it. I'm gonna get one. I'm gonna see what happens. So I buy this Sega Master System controller. All I have is a 2600. I plug the thing in there. It fits. And sure enough, that thing works.
That's awesome.
And
that would not happen nowadays.
No, that would not happen. But yeah, so a Sega Master System controller will work on the 2600, and you can play with like a nice little pad.
I really like that controller too. Like I had the Master System, and it was a fun little system.
And it works very well with 2600 games. If you want some kind of alternative from that joystick with the one red button, there's your little control pad there.
Doesn't the Sega Genesis controller have the same input too? Like I want to say it may have something similar.
I think so. Yeah, I think so.
I think you could probably use it too.
I've never tried that though.
Yeah, it's like the female connector, right? And it's got like I don't know, like 18 on the top and like 12 on the bottom or something. But
it's less than that.
It's less than that. Okay, but there's more on top than on the bottom.
Right.
That's cool. It's a good little factoid for you guys. If you're ever out there and you're like, man, I want to play some 2600, but I hate that joystick thing. Get yourself a, Sega Master System pad for sure. Maybe even a Sega Genesis.
I was
controller.
very happy to find that word.
Heck yeah, dude. Heck yeah. Okay.
Fact, I still have that, I'm pretty sure.
Do you really?
Yeah.
I wish I still had my old wood panel 2600. I'm sure we just sold it in the yard sale or something. I'd love to have one. And you've got one too, because I remember we were upstairs in your arcade room and I saw it like down on the floor. I was like, holy crap. Yeah. It's it, baby.
There it
wood
is.
paneled in all its glory. So good for you, man. You don't ever get rid of anything.
No, I don't get rid of anything.
And it's paying off big time nowadays. I'm so happy that you never got rid of any of that stuff, because it seems like every other week you bring over a box full of goodies. It's just like, boom, here it is. All right, well, that was fun, man. That was a cool, trip in the Wayback Machine, way back, up until, the years we were born, man. We were just little bitty kids when that came out.
Yeah.
And so often when I think of, retro gaming, we go immediately to Nintendo. But we were both big Atari 2600 kids, too.
It's kind of what started it all.
Yeah. The game crash was a bad thing, but for about 5-6 years, it was a hell of a ride. And, it does my heart good to see that old Atari logo still. It makes me happy. Yeah. It's a great logo. As good as all the other current system logos are, that Atari logo is just the best. Yeah. It's so cool.
Very iconic.
Very iconic. And it seems like every now and then, they come back, somebody will buy them. They'll go into bankruptcy or something, and somebody will buy, they'll just buy the name because it's so recognizable. Even today, it's pretty recognizable. I was in Target the other day and I saw this shirt with the Atari logo and I was like, wow, there's an actual shirt with an Atari logo on it. And, my kids didn't know what it was, but they do now. They're like, oh, kids, let me pull up a chair. Let its dad tell you about a story about the Atari 2600. See, there was this thing called the 2600 and it led to the great video game crash of 1983. And I'm talking about it like it's World War II or something. It was terrible, you see. But that's been our episode this week. Thanks for joining us. If you liked the video, go ahead and like it. If not, like it anyway. If you're not a subscriber, please, press subscribe. Click the little bell icon so that you know when we release new episodes. We try to release a new episode each and every Thursday. Sorry we haven't released many episodes here recently, but it's been
the holidays.
Been the holidays. Hope you guys had a happy holiday, Merry Christmas, and a Happy New Year, and all that good stuff. We're gonna try and get back on schedule, hopefully, with weather permitting and all that good stuff. So, anyways, for this week, I've been Ron Avis,
and I'm Nick Wright.
We'll see you next week.